welcome to our webinar, our Apex webinar, Emerging with Supply Chain Strength webinar series. As we come out of this pandemic and we see a resurgence, and we'll talk more about that today. So BJ Patterson is going to talk about what's going on in the world of logistics. And BJ has been on our executive panels in the past, so thank you, BJ, for all your support of our association here. BJ is a Texas-born CEO, is a professional logistics executive and Navy veteran working throughout the world. He's spent the last 25 years working in the logistics field, working in every aspect of the business from transportation to warehousing. BJ sits on many industry boards. I know he's a part of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership and the local county workforce development board. And he's been extremely involved in moving this field forward. So we're thrilled to have you with us today, BJ. And we'll let you kick it off. And if folks have questions, please put them in the chat box or the Q&A, and I will feed them to BJ as we go, and we'll go from there. So, all right, BJ, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for the introduction. Lisa and I were talking about, I spoke with a college just the other day about kind of, along the same lines. And one of the things I told them is those things that you know today will probably be useless in 2 years, and that's, really kind of the truth of logistics today is the pandemic has accelerated changes, One of the quotes I pulled up was from a renowned economist, and it was right after I started my company in 2009. In 2010, he said that e-commerce would never make up more than 15% of the total retail dollar. And it's in our most optimistic, assertions. If you take out food and automotive, it now makes up 44% of the e-commerce of the retail dollar. So if you take out food and automotive,
wow, that's insane.
Yeah, and the automotive is shifting quickly. So the assumptions that were made along the line have been, very, very wrong. And so, you look at it today, it's almost impossible to set the pandemic aside and say, okay, pandemic aside, where are we today and where are we going to be? Think of the pandemic as gasoline on the fire of change. It's all it did was stoke the fire and get it going hotter than it was before. Most of the things that have happened during the pandemic were already happening, but at a much slower rate of adoption than they are today. So first and foremost, where are we today, right? So you got a supply chain that's plugged up and moving slower than ever, and there's reasons outside of the pandemic why that happened, but the primary thing is our supply chain has always been designed to run in a certain route at a certain timing. That's how we make sure we have equipment in the right places. They've built these formulas over the years that say that, freight typically moves from, in this country, west to east, more often than east to west. Very seldom do people land product in the east and move it to the west. The bulk of it comes in the west and goes to east. That got challenged for two reasons. Before the pandemic, because of tariffs in China, a lot of production moved to Southeast Asia, into Vietnam and Indonesia, and even more into India and even into Pakistan. When you do that, then the natural advantages of coming out of China to the West Coast are eroded. They're not completely gone, but they're eroded. And it's a math game. So you saw some shift of that freight that was coming in to the West go back to the East, because the Suez Canal, I challenged a group. There's a whole bunch of people who probably didn't even know where the Suez Canal was until a couple of weeks ago. So from the Southeast Asia to go through the Suez to the East Coast, while it's still a longer voyage than to the West Coast, is much shorter than it is from, typical ports in China. So so there was some of that shift already beginning. Whether it was the tariffs, labor issues, and expenses in China had shifted, believe it or not, a lot of furniture and that type of products into Vietnam. They've also become kind of the the stars in the frozen import food market. China has really invested a lot in that market. So there was some shift already happening. So now you've got import containers and everything going to the wrong place. And then now you've got, the COVID happens and China shuts down and other markets didn't. Now you've got to scramble. And, once someone said, well, that's why we're out of toilet paper. No, I forget the percentage, but it's less than 5% of toilet paper is imported. It's all made domestically, had nothing to do with China. Had to do with people filling their garages with toilet paper, right? I never understood that.
It's true, right?
It really is.
I agree. I had that same question actually about the Suez Canal.
Yeah, right. So those things did, the accelerant was now China's back and they're producing. There was, at least on the retail side of things, there was some euphoria around, some of the tariffs being dropped. Though, everyone thought that they changed presidents, those would all go away. They really actually have not yet. I mean, that's been kind of a mythology out there. Some of them have been relaxed, but for the most part, they have not. They're anticipated to release. In that, but China's production after COVID, they had for lack of a better term, they had the bandwidth and the production capabilities to meet demand, particularly in the PPE and some other things that these other markets, Indonesia, Vietnam specifically, even India did not have. So now you're back full bore coming out of China, but the boxes are in the wrong places. The import boxes haven't moved to China. There's some in Southeast Asia. They're in the East Coast, which there's some, not to bore you with an hour worth of problematics of getting boxes back on the East Coast, but quite frankly, it's not nearly as efficient as the West Coast. They're much more scattered, much, not as densely populated. The inland empire of the East Coast is the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. And that is much further from the port than the inland empire is. And even that is very disjointed. So they had trouble getting boxes back. And equipment. Now I've got equipment in places it never was before because I'm shipping things domestically, I'm moving things. So the equipment, domestic equipment within the United States was all in the wrong places. So that's where you saw, and then on top of that, you had an unemployment insurance issue where they're boosting up and you had independent operators parking their trucks saying, I'll just sit on unemployment for a while rather than run my truck. My kids are out of school, my wife's been laid off, I'll just stay home. So you had a trucking shortage. And that's on top of, we were already short drivers pre-pandemic. So, that's all these things exacerbated the issue. And then, everybody knows the parcel issue with FedEx and UPS getting bombarded. The month of April was 40% more parcels shipped than peak of December. So think about that. I mean, and they got caught completely flat-footed. So in the fall season, they ramp up by bringing in additional employees and temps, and they do training. They have a whole process. They get ready for the fall season, the Christmas shipping season. Well, COVID hit. I mean, they were just flat-footed. I mean, now all of a sudden, now you have two things. First off, you have this massive volume surge. Plus, because of COVID, you have restrictions of how many people they could have in a facility. They couldn't put two people in a truck. They had to work every other door. So their capacity got cut by more than 50%, while their volume increased by 40%. So, it's kind of a perfect storm type thing. So and all that's to kind of frame up where we are today. I mean, we shoved so much, we had this pipe, the supply chain pipe, we packed it. I mean, we packed it full. Think of it, we packed it full of mud and we're just trying to pick on one side, but we keep packing the other side. For those of you who deal with a port, and obviously the congestion at the port, there's some to that that's a little disingenuous about how they reported it. Yes, there's a way more ships at anchorage than in the past, but again, part of that has to do with some of the tariffs that they have to come inside the mile markers to avoid some tariffs and avoid costs, where in the past they would have just drifted. So it kind of, I'll call it a little bit disingenuous about how the backup is. There's 26 vessels out there at anchorage today. I think that was today's report, was 26. But the Port of LA and Long Beach, unlike other ports in the country, can handle 10 or 11 of them at a time. I mean, they have so much more capacity than any other port in the country. The 26 isn't as problematic as some people would make you seem it is. Is it a problem? Yes. Is there delays? Yes. But those delays are more systematic than they are just ships at anchorage. We never have enough chassis. The chassis problem has been exacerbated by this peak in spending, this false peak, we'll call it, or surge. The chassis were problematic before. For those of you who don't know the history, the steamship lines historically always provided chassis. They were in charge of managing chassis. And then it's been 7 years ago, I guess, 8 years ago, they said, they're not ours anymore. We give. They belong to you guys. You guys manage them. We don't want to deal with them anymore. So they went to private leasing companies to provide the chassis, and that's a problem. For those of you who have never toured the port complex at Long Beach and LA, it is massive. It is unlike any other port complex on the face of the earth. It is massive and spread out more than you could believe, and chassis are never in the right place. We could spend hours talking about why that is. Everything from these alliances and these collaboration events where they're co-sharing vessels, and there's a lot of reasons why the chassis are never in the right place. So all that to be said is the pipeline is plugged, and we're trying to pick away at it. And then just about the time that, the initial sailings for April and May were down about 13% year over year. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, we get another stimulus check issued out to everybody. And now those sailings are up 15% year over year. So instead of going down and helping us kind of clear it out, they send out checks to everybody, and everybody goes out and buys something at Home Depot or Walmart or Target, wherever. And so that you'll look, the import numbers are up significantly because of that.
Wow.
And so the idea that we would be out of this log jam by June or July is kind of I think that's a waning thing, and now we're looking at if the economy continues to grow at the pace it has, we're not going to see any relief before the end of the year at our current pace. So what does that mean? That means that as logistics professionals, you're going to be dealing with issues that you've never dealt with before, and that's trying to do your own load matching. We have a large brokerage operation, and we're doing more load matching for ourselves. The carriers aren't even doing it to try to get, I can get this move done if I can get the guy this move done, that kind of thing. And it is insane to try and, it's all about asset utilization at this point. There's not enough warehouses. Every warehouse that comes up, I get flyers every day that, oh, by the way, we got the concrete poured, or you want to pop the lease now. In the past, you typically don't see leases signed until at least they've got a shell CFO or something to that or nature. And then late last year, it looked like they were signing leases as soon as the walls were up. Now they're signing leases when the foundation's finished.
Wow.
crazy. We've been trying to we've been in the market for another building, and every building we've looked at so far, minimum of 6 or 7 bidders, not people just putting a proposal, but bidders for the space.
Wow.
We've
That's
seen,
insane.
it really is crazy. I mean, I've been in this business. You see, I have no hair. I've been in this business a really long time, and I've never seen anything like it. Even some of the peak times, 2006, 2005, when it was really hot and heavy. You know, we've always said in the past that typically what happens, this warehouse utilization goes up and down, and has my entire career. And typically you can start getting a peak, and then the developers overbuild, and next thing you know, you've got a glut of warehouses because they overbuild. And now, you know, there's no end in sight. You know, the next thing you'll see is some of these dead malls being revitalized or reutilized. I mean, Amazon's doing some of that now, but the growth is insane. Warehousing space is just not available. What is available is hyper expensive, and so you've
It's a
got
tough time to renew leases as well,
what's
BJ?
that?
Is it a tough time to renew leases as well?
Yeah, I'm thanking God I don't have to right now.
Yeah, I have a client that's doing that. So
Oh, it's terrible. We saw a lease signed last week in Fontana for 81 cents triple net. To put things in perspective, in Fontana in 2011, the going rate was about 30 cents.
holy cow.
Yeah, so with your CAM and net effect OPEX, you're looking at almost $1 a foot in Fontana, California. That is, I never thought those words would ever come out of my mouth.
Oh my gosh.
And just a few years ago, that's Long Beach rates. That's, you know, the Rancho Dominguez rates. That's not Fontana rates. So, and it's just really just a supply and demand thing. Is as retail moves out of brick and mortar into e-commerce and into warehouses. And then the other thing that people, I think, don't give enough credence to, in 2006, Amazon didn't have a single employee in San Bernardino County, not one. And today they're the largest employer in the county by quite a margin. The largest employer in the county. In San Bernardino County alone, they operate over 12 million square feet. And that's about to increase when they open the San Bernardino Airport air operations, another 650,000 square foot building over in San Bernardino Airport. And then this is Amazon's numbers. Amazon says for every million square feet they operate, they require almost 2 million square feet of supportive warehousing in the area. So all those people that are supplying them with FBA products and doing drop ship for them and holding products for the manufacturers, you know, so it's almost a 2-to-1 ratio of
Wow.
of the need for additional warehousing just to support them. So,
And how much did you say they have in the Inland Empire?
12 million in San Bernardino County.
Oh, wow. Just in San Bernardino County.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just
So that's requiring 24 million, basically.
right.
It's ridiculous.
And think of that. I mean, and that's just them. I mean, and yes, they're the monster in the room, but that's just them. Think of all the other retailers and other e-commerce shipping. You know, it's insane, and there's no, you know, at this point, you know, they were kind of thinking that real estate would peak this year, 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
Best guess right now and again, everything is a guess, but they don't see any relief until 2023, 2024. You know, now you're getting into scarcity of land and repurposing facilities, you know, and you're moving further and further, you know, east, just to try and find land. It's not even about expense.
They're going up, maybe. Are they going up as well, or?
Yeah, you don't see
They can
that
only
so
go up
much
so
out here.
much, I guess.
You really can, and you know, there's a few tall facilities in Inland Empire. Target, I think, has the tallest one in Rialto. They're just under 100 feet. I think that's the tallest one in the Inland Empire. You just don't see that as much. In one of the problems with being a tall building versus e-commerce is speed. The taller yard, unless it's fully automated, I mean, like the Target facility in Rialto, gantry cranes and that type of thing, which is a huge investment. Unless you can do that, you can't meet the speeds that you need for e-commerce.
I see.
And quite frankly, that's what makes the Inland Empire attractive, is you can build these big facilities, million plus square feet. They're building 1 million square feet in Hesperia now, which is really kind of, that's a little bit scary of those that have to transit the pass every day. If they're going to start building in big numbers in the high desert. There's some fear of going all the way out to Beaumont. The 10 and the 60 are just not, can't be expanded to handle a lot of additional truck traffic. So, kind of where are we today, with all this congestion, all this change and e-commerce, you're seeing, you add on top of all this, a lack of, you hear the unemployment numbers and you think, man, there's just people begging for jobs out there. That is not the case, not even close. Amazon, right across the street from my office here, held a hiring event. They said they had 2,000 openings and only 400 people showed up to their hiring event.
Wow.
As long as kids are out of school or even we've had some of our own employees tell us this new hybrid where they're going a couple days or half days is actually more problematic than just having them at home. But the kids and schooling, I don't think people understand the impact that's had on the workforce. A lot of people that would normally go back to work is staying home because they can't afford the daycare and they got to make sure their kids do their schoolwork. They become teachers, so that's had an impact on, you talk about the congestion, you talk about the speed, you're going online, you're seeing things you never thought you would see this time of, in this day and age. And that's people saying, oh, you'll get your stuff in 10 days. 10
Well,
days.
the unemployment has probably had an impact too, right? Because there
Very
are
much so.
People who don't want to work.
Don't want to work. And I think that, and you add the school kids out of school, I can get unemployment, I can get the extra money. Why spend my money on daycare? Why not be home with my kids? We listen to our employees and those are all the things they're telling us. And we're running usually about 20% short almost every day of employees. So working overtime and those types of things to try and get the work done. We're not alone in that case. Where it puts us is that, the current unemployment is supposed to expire in September, hopefully in time for the fall season. Though there's some talk that I don't know there'll be a fall quote unquote season. It just seems like it's just going to stay busy the whole way through. I don't know that there'll be a peak. There might be a little molehill, but I don't think it'll be a peak. But I think it's going to be busy all the way through. You're going to see the one upside of the congestion at the docks has been that warehouse space has been able to handle it because the product is turning so fast. We have clients that, everything that comes in is already filling orders that are back ordered. So, and you're hearing that pretty consistently too, that there's a lot of product back ordered. And so the product coming in off these containers is going straight back out. And so that's a major, believe it or not, kind of a help in a large part. There early in the pandemic, there was just no place to put anything. There were storage trailers all over Southern California, Nevada, Arizona. There were storage trailers everywhere trying to hold product because there just wasn't enough space for it. From what I've seen, that has relaxed, a little bit. Again, as the economy's improved, and the spending has increased, so therefore a lot of that stuff is beginning to clear out.
Mhm.
Particularly, there was a lot of, because of early in COVID, a lot of spring products didn't go to retailers. And so that product was pent up in the warehouses and clogging up warehouses. So a lot of that has flushed out. And so while warehouse space is still very, very tight, it's not as, I would call it, crisis level that it was, 6, 7 months ago. So, um, you know, but the change is not going to go anywhere.
Right.
E-commerce is not going to reverse. I don't see any indicators. And again, as we talk to our clients, and so many of them have pivoted to increase their e-commerce presence.
Mhm.
We're not seeing them prepare to pivot back to brick and mortar. What we're seeing them do is invest in technology to increase their abilities on the e-commerce side of the house. You're seeing a lot of diversification in the providers. You're seeing a lot of new people get into the market. Um, my caution to you is to be very wary of some of these startup 3PLs. Um, and I say that, not, I mean, there's more business than we know we can handle, and it's not about that. It's just really
Right.
about this. Some of these startup 3PLs, A, don't know what they're doing, and B, they're going to give you falsely low rates because they've conned a bunch of investors into giving them a bunch of money. They're going to burn through the money, and then they're going to jack your rates up, and they're not going to service your account. And so I just be cautious with those. We hear that tale on an almost daily basis. So
Really.
yeah, there's just so many have gotten into the market. And it's, just like anything, any new fad, whether it's chia pets or whatever it is, as soon as they become hot, everybody and their brother wants to get in on it. And so there's a lot of knockoffs. You've also seen a lot of consolidation too. And traditionally, non-asset players like C.H. Robinson, who's the largest freight broker by a mile in this country, has always been a non-asset based company. And they have, over the last 2 years, gotten into the warehouse game themselves, and begun to buy up some e-commerce players and providing their own warehousing services, in a departure from their traditional role. So you've seen that. You've seen, XPO, which divested and broke up and split off their fulfillment services. GXO is, I think, the name of the new company. So you're seeing a lot of diversification that way, and people focusing on e-commerce. A lot of money being spent on automation. Never believe the lie that people will tell you that automation is going to, cost jobs in the logistics industry. Uh, Everything I've seen, and I've toured, in the last few weeks, I've toured several highly automated facilities, and wow, they still had a bunch of people working there. Best case, the automation is going to fill the gap of the workers that aren't in the industry. It's not going to reduce jobs. In fact, it may change jobs. I sat on a call yesterday with IEP and told Dee Dee Myers, she's the head of GoBiz for the state. I said, the question was, is there a fear that automation is going to cost jobs? And I said, well, I sit on the workforce development board, and I said, no more than the car got rid of stable boys, stable boys became mechanics, and
Yep.
that's, warehouse workers have become automation mechanics and automation programmers. And there's still a tremendous need, no matter how much you automate, to have people in the process. There's only so many things you can automate. And most automation is a process called to the person, two person or two people. There's a lot of different ways of saying it, but it means it brings the product to a person who processes the order and then sends it out. There's no there's no evidence whatsoever that automation is going to cost any jobs whatsoever. It may shift jobs, but it's not going to cost jobs. And
Well, are you seeing, BJ, that there's a lot of people pursuing adding automation and technology? That's what I'm seeing.
This year, the 70% of our investment capex this year will be spent in technology improvements, along with some basic automation and some autonomous work that we're going to do within the warehouse. But most of what automation is an often misdescribed word. And when people think of automation, they think robots running all over the warehouse. The bulk of automation is actually just technology. It's automating processes that someone would keystroke in versus a computer that handles the transaction without a human there, pounding keys to try and make it happen. That is actually the bulk of automation, is just trying to move information automatically, automatic reports, automatic, testing and alerts. And, instead of someone watching a screen all day, the computer watches it and alerts somebody to issues. That is the bulk of the automation that you see. Yes, there's a lot of robots and auto labelers and auto tapers and those types of things that are in everybody's process these days. But that is really, when people say automation, that is not the bulk of it. And for us, we have a mantra in our organizations is always try to remove the grunt work. Try to make everything a more value-added process. So again, technology is where that's at, and how do we improve the technology? Because in the world of e-commerce now, the part that becomes the differentiator in providers and just in retailers is the quality. It's shipping accuracy, the speed to which you can ship. But the part that people don't realize is most automation within a warehouse is really not aimed at as much at productivity as it is order accuracy. Mm-hmm. Order accuracy, inventory accuracy is number 1 and 2. The speed will get there, but people are, particularly in today's social media world and the speed of information world, they're more worried about inventory accuracy, meaning that when Lisa clicks on to buy something online, that it actually is in inventory. She can't click on it and then find out 2 days later that, oh, by the way, we didn't have it. That's just unacceptable, and the backlash should be immediate, and the backlash should be devastating to that retailer. So that's number 1, inventory accuracy. A lot of the automation you see, particularly in the more highly automated facilities, really aimed at that more so than almost anything. They want to make sure that everything gets put away in the right spot and gets handled in the right spot. And then order accuracy, obviously, you see a lot of money. If you go to an Amazon facility, for instance, they have check weighers after every parcel that looks at scans that box and knows what it should weigh. And if it doesn't weigh what it should, then it's rejected and it goes through a Q&A process and it's revalidated. So that quality and the quality of the experience of the consumer, that becomes, where in the past, that was a retail worker walking down an aisle saying, hey, do you have any questions? Right? Yeah. And then the last thing about automation is automation is about bandwidth, right? So if the LMA retail store was doing a spring sale, outside of maybe a couple of more hours stocking shelves, if you think of it in a warehouse, the orders are processed by order pickers, people picking orders, and that's how they're processed. Well, if you increase your sales by 70% in a store, the additional order pickers are called consumers. Right. They come in and pick the orders off. They pick the orders off the shelf. You may have to add a cashier, a processor, or 2. But the bulk of the labor is actually done by the consumer themselves. Whereas in a warehouse, Now that's additional labor picking. So for the instance of autonomous bots, I can have 20 of them, and depending on volume, I can turn on 4 or I can turn on 20, or I can turn on any number in between. So that bandwidth, expansion can be held by some automation, which can increase your productivity without having to bring in a bunch of untrained people to try and expand, because that's what happens. I don't think anybody in my operations team likes Groupon, because our customers constantly will drop a Groupon and not tell us, and their sales will go up 80% in a day, and we didn't even know it was coming. And they go, "Oh no, we forgot to tell you, we dropped a Groupon the other day." We ran an ad on. We have an influencer. We have a client that right in the early stages of the pandemic, one of the influencers, don't get me to lying, I forget her name, but took a picture with their shoes and talked about their shoes. They sold out of the shoes in like 3 hours. And their order numbers the next day were up 1,100%. So
Wow.
it's like, because a girl on Instagram took a picture of their shoes. It's like, what? So, I mean, so those are the reasons that make, the changes in automation, the changes in being able to be predictive analytics to try and understand what's going to go when, and all the best laid plans are ruined by a girl on Instagram. So, those are all things that have changed in over, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I guess now, when I started my company, I come from a retail background. I worked for Target, I worked for Walmart, I worked for large 3PLs before I started the company. And, the old brick and mortar was, you got your orders on Monday, you shipped them out by Friday, they're all full truckload, bada bing, bada boom, no big deal. Everybody had a rhythm, everybody knew what to do. The orders nowadays are very rarely a full truckload of anything. Typically it's LTL or parcel, and the orders vary, and most orders, with the exception of a few retail outliers, are expected to go out same day. And so the problem with that is, in an e-commerce environment, there's very little prediction of what the volume is going to be. Everyone knows, but we've learned a lesson that if it's snowing in the Midwest, all of a sudden these items all of a sudden surge the next day because everyone stayed home and ordered online, or all of a sudden it's sunny and everybody's outside and your sales go down, because everybody's not on their phone and not online trying to order stuff. And my wife with her iPad and a glass of wine saying, these are all the things I can't live without. So, those things don't happen. And so the traditional retail always had this, this feedback loop, this, call it, kind of accumulations area where you had the buffer, they could handle those surges with very little impact on their store labor. It just was because the consumer did so much of the work. Things moved in a bulk fashion. Things did not move in an each pick fashion. And again, the consumer made up the bulk of the labor required to flex. With e-commerce, much more at the whim of the consumer, at the whim of what's going on TV, online. There's so many things, and we've seen, I've never in my retail world seen increases of 1,100% and overnight. I've never seen that before, and in the pandemic that has been problematic, particularly when there's a labor shortage. But the parcel guys have at least conditioned people that things aren't moving as fast as they were. I don't think that will last much longer, as they're all trying to get back to guaranteed service. But it's problematic. So,
Well, and didn't they expand? I know that the Ontario airport's now like one of the, or is it the largest package
it's fourth
shipment?
largest. I
Fourth
think it's
largest
fourth
package
largest
shipment
one.
airport. And it's like UPS has significant operations, but FedEx is building
Mhm.
significant.
FedEx is increasing there. UPS and FedEx have both expanded at San Bernardino Airport as well. They have their own nifty special gate now at San Bernardino Airport. And then you got to add Amazon in there. Amazon has significant operations in Ontario, and they just built this monster facility over at San Bernardino, where they're going to bring in, I think it's some insane number, 60 flights a week or something. And
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy. So everyone's still trying to figure out, and because of the pandemic, the other thing that clogged up the parcel was, what people don't understand is baggage fees on airlines are to dissuade you from bringing bags on because they'd rather carry belly freight. Belly freight makes up, believe it or not, almost 50% of the packages that move around the country moves in the belly of passenger planes. And that's, particularly your USPS. USPS almost exclusively rides in the bellies of passenger planes. That's why you don't see USPS planes flying anywhere, because they fly almost exclusively in belly freight. Well, when the passenger planes were all grounded, now you lost all that belly freight capacity. So that's another thing that impacted the parcel system. But as we move forward, I think that the biggest things that are going to stick, the biggest things that are going to change is this. The e-commerce is not going back. Brick and mortar will survive to some degree because of the social aspect of it. Malls will be, in some areas, will be repurposed, particularly in your more urban areas. The suburbs, at least the common thinking is that the malls will survive in some fashion, but in your more urban areas where you're going to see people like Amazon and others try to repurpose those malls into micro fulfillment centers, because malls are typically near population centers. And so it would make sense to use them to fill e-commerce orders. That, and you're just going to continue to see advances in how information flows back and forth in the logistics industry, and how you connect the warehouse to the consumer. Those things are going to be continue to evolve. And again, everything you thought you knew last year is virtually worthless today. And if you don't keep paying attention and learning, you'll sink like a rock. I think that's the status of the apparatus, Lisa.
Very good. So as everybody have questions, please put them in the chat box of the Q&A so that I can pass them on. But let's see here. So now, from a distribution standpoint, are you seeing any other changes coming about, or just the lack of space, the increase in price, and like automation? Are those sounds like those three things?
All three. I mean, don't ever dismiss the domestic transportation issues. Not having trucks and because that exacerbates the problem with warehouses, because the inbound freight flowing out, if the outbound freight doesn't flow out timely, that causes clogs in the network. Domestic transportation, again, if you listen to the people that are way smarter than me, they don't see that changing much this year. They'll continue to struggle. Because of the internet, people don't want to be a long haul driver anymore. They can go online and see everything they want to see. So, the domestic transportation, Walmart just invested in, I think it's some insane number, like 5,000 intermodal boxes or 6,000 intermodal boxes. If you drive along the 10 freeway in the Colton area, you'll see them stacked to the sky over there. Because they know that the rail is ultimately going to be more dependable than over the road trucks because of the lack of drivers.
Oh, really? So you're thinking that, or it sounds like you're thinking that rail will increase in popularity here, and
it's going to get its heyday back because just the lack of reliable long haul truckers. As truckers, truckers is culture changes. Truckers want to be home every night. So you have the bulk of them want to be regional truckers, drayage, doing local delivery. The rail makes sense because I can get the local drayman. I just can't get that long haul guy that wants to go from here to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, I can see it. So what you're saying is in essence that'll add time to the transit trip, but it will, but it's going to be what's going to be required, I guess. Interesting. Well, like you said, they have been out of, they haven't really been growing their business a lot in the last many years, right?
They have not. Intermodal's been pretty stagnant the last couple of years, and a lot of people view that as a speed to market issue. But what people are finding is reliability is a higher concern than speed sometimes, and also the other thing is you can't discount the 2008 effect. 2008 effect is so many retailers pushed inventory back down the pipe and didn't want to hold inventory because so many of them got caught with the shorts down with the inventory in 2008 during the crash. So there was this kind of push back to the just in time kind of thing, to the point where we joked that it went from just in time to just late. Everything was just late, right? So but now you're starting to see those inventories creep back up as again, they got caught with the shorts down the other way, not having enough inventory.
Well, actually, that's a good question. Is that I would agree. So, since 2008, it's been increasing. But do you see like people increasing further now from the pandemic because they got short? Or
I think you're going to see that, and that's partly another thing that's driven the warehousing shortage as inventory levels. I mean, if you look at the purchase managers index, inventory levels have gone up significantly during the pandemic. And I don't see that changing too much because it's particularly with the congestion at the ports, more and more of your retailers and your retail shippers are seeing that they've got to have safety stock because the difference is in e-commerce the damage is immediate, right? So if you're out of stock, the damage is immediate and hard to recover. Because once it gets out that you don't have the stuff, it goes to another retailer like that. Whereas in the old retail days, you're shopping, you go there and it's empty. You might buy something else from them. I went to get this, but they had that, so I bought that instead. Well, in e-commerce, it doesn't work that way. You just skip to another website and you buy from a different retailer, and it's over. And so, I think that you're going to see more inventory that as a result of that.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. So sounds like more. So, and it doesn't sound like the freight rates, well, certainly not warehousing rates, but it also sounds like the freight rates. And what about these ocean carrier rates? Because they've been going sky high, right?
Yeah. I mean, I saw, we booked a load the other day for $10,000 for a 40-foot container.
Holy cow.
And for those of you who don't move ocean freight, 2 years ago, it was about $1,800. So
that's a crazy, that's only 2 years ago. That's crazy.
Yeah. And then, there was a lot of reasons why it was that much, but
still,
yeah, it's ridiculous.
Well, actually, I mean, I have heard from other people that the same kind of multiple.
Oh, it's crazy.
And more.
And worse. Yes. I know friends of mine that are in it's that time of year where people are renegotiating their steamship contracts. Typically that's a late April, early May, that's cycle. And the steamship lines have been very, very bold in saying that their increases between 50 and 70%.
Wow.
I've never. And part of that is they've been reticent to add more capacity. The funny thing about the steamship lines is that they're one of the largest outside of the automotive industry. They're the largest asset operators in the world, and they're probably the worst asset managers in the world. They never can seem to get it straight. But they've been slow to add capacity.
I think it may still encourage more reshoring as well, just because people are thinking, how do I get things faster and more reliably? But then they still have to have materials, and the whole thing's going to be a problem.
That's the fallacy of reshoring, is that yes, there's a lot of assembly that's taking place. Mexico has been really kind of a hotbed, but so much of the raw materials are still coming from out of the country. California Steel right there, they import 100% of their slabs. So so much of well, a good example is, okay, we have one of our clients that moved all their production to Vietnam. That's great, but all the hardware still came from China.
Right. So you're still,
when China shut down, they couldn't get hardware. So I think the supply chain is more complicated now than it's ever been. Production, everyone talks about China being kind of the behemoth of production, but and that's still true to a large extent, but things are so, diverse now and coming from all over now. It makes it, when people say, well, it's reshoring, well, parts of it are.
Yeah.
But there's still so much that requires the international supply chain that, I don't know that solves a lot.
No, you're right. There's still issues. And it sounds like what you're saying, and tell me if this is correct from a summary point of view, but with the stimulus checks and the pandemic, with things opening up and all sorts of reasons like that, we ended up with a massive demand at the same time that China opened up. So of course, we have a lot of items coming over at the same time that we did have COVID issues at the ports. So they did get behind. So they've been behind for months now. And it sounds like what you're saying is, and this is what I was reading too, that basically they thought they'd get caught up sometime in the summer, but then really kind of not, because then the peak season would start anyway. But what you're saying is definitely not now because of the current conditions.
Typically, when they get behind like this, Chinese New Year usually helps them catch up. But this year, China decided to keep their ports open during Chinese New Year. Didn't allow them to shut down, and kept shipping because they had so much over there that needed to get out. And so a friend of mine that was over there right about that time said the boxes were just stacked everywhere. They just, there was no way they could close. So we didn't get any rest over Chinese New Year. This latest stimulus check has increased imports again. So you're right. And people forget, and part of the problem is the changing of seasons, right? So forget just Christmas, in itself, it's the changing of seasons, going from spring to summer, summer to fall, fall to winter. And that's you go to your retailers, you see this complete reset of new stuff. Well, that causes these artificial peaks. And
right.
So regardless of whether or not Christmas is good or bad, you still got to bring in fall goods. You still got to bring in winter goods, and then right in the middle of winter, you start bringing in spring goods. So
right. Well, and it sounds like and it's probably not going to get caught up in the summer from what you're saying, and then there's the peak season, if nothing else, and then there's preparation for the next Chinese New Year. So I guess it sounds like if they shut down next Chinese New Year, that might give the option. However, I'm also hearing you say, and I've heard the same thing, that e-commerce is here to stay. It's not going down. So who knows? It could just be that we have to increase to a whole new level of capacity quickly. Sounds like.
Well, I think that's it. That's where your automation is going to come in. That's where your technology is going to come in. And quite frankly, to some degree, a realignment of consumers' expectations.
It's true.
Amazon's going to fight, to try and keep the 1-day, 2-day services alive, but I think there's going to be a realignment of expectations that say that, I'm okay getting it in 4 days. I don't have to get it tomorrow, or quite honestly, I've ordered stuff at night and have it arrive at 10 o'clock the next morning. It just, it's baffling. But
I know, right? And it depends where you are, because like actually my mom who lives in Arizona can get things faster than I can most of the time. So I don't know, they must have a better DC sitting right there or something.
Must be. But yeah, I mean, so who knows? I think that I think it's going to be a challenge the rest of the year. We'll see what happens later in the summer as more and more states open up.
Yeah.
I tend to think it's going to make it worse, but
it does sound like it. So it seems like we should try, as like supply chain professionals and some of us as business leaders, we should be thinking about technology automation for sure. We should be planning ahead. We should actually be thinking about things like, maybe we should be thinking about intermodal, like I'm thinking out of the box, but basically, because otherwise, just thinking we're going to do something faster is just not going to happen. And there's a shortage of people. So we got to think about all this.
All the above, Lisa. I mean, it's every day, I had an old boss who used to tell me to, strive to know what you don't know, and, but every day you need to be waking up. Okay. So don't plan for what I'm doing today, plan on what I may have to do tomorrow. And I think this is the opportune time for that. And just like anything, those that are able to think outside the box and come up with the right way to do it will succeed. And those who just kind of stick their head in the sand and don't do those things, don't do those exercises of what if and how could we, reimagine what we're doing now. If you're not doing that, then you're not going to succeed. You're going to dry up and go away. But you have to be thinking outside the box. You have to be reading a lot and asking a lot of questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And from that point of view, I would be remiss if I didn't say we're starting a few classes coming up, and with everything BJ is saying, there is no time like the present to get to increase or improve your education of supply chain management and all of the fundamentals, because managing through the next few years is going to be not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. So definitely join us. You'll find it on our website at apex-ie.com. We have a couple of critical classes starting on the 19th. So, check that out. And then we also thank you, BJ, it's been a, really informative, and we really appreciate your expertise and as busy as you are. So thank you for joining us.
I appreciate the opportunity, and best of luck to everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And before we wrap up, join us next month. We're going to have Michelle Nash-Hoff, who's going to talk about reshoring and the resurgence of manufacturing. We started talking about with BJ today. Certainly nothing is easy. There are no easy answers. So I think, like BJ said, it's like continual learning, and just keep yourself informed, and you got to go faster than you've ever thought you could possibly move.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much, BJ.
Thank you.